The desert planet was quiet, with only the sound of wind brushing across endless dunes. For centuries, no one cared for this world. It had no rivers, no forests, and no cities. The sand stretched for miles in every direction, hiding the ground beneath. Only recently had humans arrived, hoping to find minerals or forgotten ruins. Most believed the world was empty, yet humans were always curious. That curiosity often led them to places where others would not go. A small team of explorers set their camp near a cluster of sharp rocks. Their camp was simple: 3 shelters for sleeping, a tower for communication, and a few machines that scanned beneath the surface. At first, the scanners showed nothing unusual. The planet seemed like nothing more than stone and dust. But one night, as the machines hummed in the dark, the readings changed. The scanners picked up a pulse deep underground. It was not the kind of pulse made by natural forces. It was steady, like a drum beat, repeating every few seconds. The leader of the team, a man named Aaron, stared at the data with wide eyes. He was not a soldier or a politician. He was a simple explorer, a man who had spent his life searching for forgotten places. Aaron called the others to gather. They stood around a glowing screen, watching the pulse move across the display. It came from one location, just beneath the sands. "What do you think it is?" asked Myra, the youngest member of the team. Her voice carried both excitement and worry. Aaron shook his head. "I don't know. But it is not natural. Something is down there." They worked quickly, setting up drilling tools. The machines dug into the sand, throwing dust high into the air. Hours passed, and the sun rose over the horizon. At last, the drills hit something solid. The sound was strange, like stone but deeper, as if the ground itself was alive. When the sand cleared, the team saw a flat surface beneath them. It was dark, smooth, and larger than any stone they had ever seen. The explorers brushed away the dust with their hands. The surface was carved with patterns, lines that curved like rivers across the stone. In the center was a great shape that looked like a door. It was taller than 5 men and wider than their shelters. The patterns glowed faintly with the same rhythm as the pulse from the scanner. Every few seconds, the lines lit up, then faded, like a heartbeat in the stone. Myra stepped back. "It looks alive," she whispered. Aaron placed his hand on the surface. It was cold, but it vibrated softly, as if something behind it wanted to move. He turned to the others. "This is no ordinary ruin. We have found a door." The team stared in silence. The idea of a door buried beneath the desert was unsettling. Doors were made to open, and doors were made to close. But this one seemed like it had been buried on purpose. For days, they studied it. The machines scanned deeper, but could not see past the thick surface. The door refused to reveal what was behind it. The team took turns watching, recording every flicker of light, every vibration. The pulse never stopped. At night, while the wind howled outside the camp, Myra often asked questions. Who built it? Why is it here? What if it was never meant to be found? Aaron did not answer. He kept staring at the glowing lines, his mind racing with thoughts. Humanity had discovered ruins before, on other worlds. Most of them were simple, broken statues or forgotten cities. But this door was different. It was not broken. It was not ruined. It was waiting. On the 5th night, something happened. The pulse grew faster. The lines on the door shone brighter. The ground shook, and the air filled with a low hum. The explorers ran outside, their eyes fixed on the giant surface. Slowly, the outline of the door began to move. The seams glowed, and dust poured from the cracks. The door shifted, as if it had taken a breath after countless years. Myra clutched Aaron's arm. "It is opening," she said. But just as suddenly as it began, the motion stopped. The door froze in place, leaving a narrow gap that revealed only darkness beyond. The pulse returned to its slow rhythm, steady and calm, as if nothing had happened. The team approached carefully. The gap was too small to see inside clearly. It was like staring into a cave that swallowed all light. Aaron bent down, peering into the blackness. For a moment, he thought he saw movement. Something shimmered, far within, like stars hidden behind a curtain. He stepped back quickly. "We cannot rush," he said firmly. "We do not know what lies beyond." The explorers agreed to wait, but the camp no longer felt safe. Every sound of wind, every shake of sand, made them uneasy. They knew they had uncovered something far older and far stranger than themselves. As dawn broke over the desert, Aaron stood before the door again. He placed his hand against the cold surface. The lines glowed beneath his fingers, as if answering his touch. He whispered to himself, "This door does not want to stay shut." The desert remained silent, but the faint pulse continued, steady and patient, waiting for the day when the door would open again. The discovery of the ancient door spread quickly. Aaron and his team had sent reports to their command station, and within days, signals from other worlds began to arrive. But not all the voices carried excitement. Many spoke with fear. At first, the messages came from nearby alien settlements. The desert planet was not as forgotten as the humans had believed. Across the stars, other species had long known of its existence. To them, the barren world was not empty. It was sacred, a place avoided in silence. One morning, as the explorers studied the glowing lines of the door, a signal came through the communication tower. The voice was deep and heavy, translated into human language by the machine. "You must leave that place," the voice said. "The door is not yours to touch. It was sealed for a reason." The team gathered around the speaker. Myra looked at Aaron with wide eyes. "They know about the door," she whispered. Aaron answered the signal. "We are explorers. We only want to understand what this is. Tell us what you know." There was a long silence. Then the voice spoke again. "The stories of our people say the door holds what must never be free. Long ago, many joined together to build the seal. Countless lives were given to close it. And now you humans disturb it." The message ended. The team stood in silence, listening to the wind outside the camp. That evening, a ship arrived. It descended slowly, stirring sand into a storm. The vessel was old, its hull covered in marks from long journeys. From within stepped three figures, tall and robed. Their faces were hidden by masks of smooth metal. They carried no weapons, yet their presence was heavy, as though they had walked from a time older than memory. The leader of the visitors raised a hand in greeting. The translator in Aaron's wrist device turned the alien's voice into words. "We are keepers of memory. We are called the Thelen. This world is not meant for camps and machines. You have touched what should remain buried." Aaron welcomed them into the camp. The explorers offered water and a place to sit, but the visitors did not touch food or drink. Their attention never left the door glowing faintly in the distance. One of the Thelen spoke, his voice sharp. "Your kind is young. You rush where others fear to walk. Do you not understand what you have found?" Aaron kept his voice calm. "That is why we ask. Tell us what it is. Help us understand." The leader lowered his mask slightly, revealing eyes that glowed faintly blue. He looked tired, like one who had carried heavy knowledge for too long. "The door was built to hold back an enemy that cannot die," he said. "It is a prison, forged by many hands, human and non-human alike. It was sealed before your world even knew the fire of cities. We are the last who remember the war, though even our memories are shadows now." Myro leaned forward. "What kind of enemy?" The Thelen shook his head. "Shadows that eat light. Shapes without end. They came from beyond the stars, and they left only silence where they passed. Entire worlds were consumed. The only answer was to trap them. The builders gave their lives to force the creatures inside the prison. Then they made the door, stronger than stone, stronger than time. And they swore it would never open again. The camp fell quiet. The only sound was the wind pushing against the walls. But it has already moved, Aaron said slowly. We saw it open, just a little. It did this on its own. The Thelen looked at one another with unease. The leader's voice grew heavy. Then the seal is failing. Perhaps your presence has weakened it? Perhaps time itself has worn it down. But if the shadows stir, all will be lost. One of the other explorers, a man named Joran, crossed his arms. You tell us to leave, but if what you say is true, running will not save us. If this thing breaks, the danger will spread to every world, not just this one. The leader of the Thelen studied him for a long time. That is why the door must remain untouched. If it is left alone, perhaps the prison will hold for a little longer. But your kind is reckless. You search, you dig, you pull at what you do not understand. If you stay, you may bring the end sooner. Aaron felt the weight of the words. He wanted to argue, but he also knew the truth in them. Humans were driven by curiosity. That curiosity had led them across the stars, but it also brought them into danger again and again. The Thelen stood to leave. Our warning is given. If you are wise, you will cover the door with sand again and depart. If you are foolish, the shadows will answer. The ship rose into the sky and vanished into the clouds. That night, the camp was restless. Myra sat by the fire, staring at the door's faint glow. What if they are right? What if we have awakened something that should sleep forever? Joran shook his head. And what if they are wrong? What if the door does not hide monsters, but knowledge? Perhaps it was not a prison, but a vault. We cannot know unless we look. Aaron listened to both, torn between caution and curiosity. He had spent his life searching for the unknown, and now the greatest discovery of all stood before him. Yet it came with a warning louder than any before. He walked alone to the edge of the excavation. The door loomed tall, silent, yet alive with its soft pulse. He placed his hand upon it once more. The lines glowed brighter, as if responding to him. In the stillness of the desert night, Aaron whispered, if you hold answers, we will find them. If you hold dangers, we must face them. Because humans do not turn away. The door gave no reply, but the ground beneath him trembled ever so slightly, as though something deep inside had heard his words. The warnings had been given. Now the choice belonged to the humans. 4 days after the visit from the Thelen, the camp was uneasy. The explorers continued their study, but their movements had grown slower, more cautious. The warning from the alien visitors lingered in every thought. Each time the desert wind blew across the door, Myra imagined voices whispering inside. Each time the glowing lines pulsed, Joran thought of chains breaking, little by little. Aaron tried to keep the team steady. We cannot let fear guide us, he reminded them. If the door is dangerous, then it must be understood. If it holds knowledge, then it must be revealed. Either way, turning our backs will not erase it. So they worked. The scanners circled the door, trying to measure its depth. The translators studied the markings, hoping they would form a language. But the more they learned, the less clear the truth became. The symbols were strange, sometimes like stars, sometimes like waves. When Myra traced her hand along one of the carvings, the glowing lines brightened for a moment, then dimmed again, as if the door had reacted to her touch. One evening, as the sun set in fire-red light, the door trembled. It was not the small vibration they had felt before. This was different. The ground shook hard enough to knock cups from tables and send sand pouring from the cliffs. The explorers ran from their shelters and stared at the massive structure. The glow from the carvings grew brighter and brighter until the entire surface of the door shone like a lantern in the night. The lines pulsed quickly, beating like a racing heart. Then came a sound, deep and heavy, like stone grinding against stone. The door began to shift. The explorers stood frozen. Dust fell in clouds as the seams of the door cracked open. A long line of darkness split across the middle. The glow outlined the edges as the massive slabs pulled apart. A roar of air burst outward, hot and dry, as though the planet itself exhaled after centuries of silence. Myra clutched Joran's arm. "It is opening again." Aaron raised a hand, trying to steady his team. "Stay calm. Watch carefully." The door continued to move until the gap was wide enough for a person to walk through. Beyond lay only darkness. The glow of the carvings did not reach far inside. It was as though the light was swallowed whole by the blackness. A strange hum filled the air, low at first, then rising, a vibration that pressed against their ears and their chests. It was not a sound made by machines. It was older, deeper, almost alive. The explorers placed lights on the ground near the entrance. The beams pushed into the dark, revealing a vast chamber. The walls inside were smooth and lined with carvings like those on the door. But these carvings were larger, stretching like rivers across stone. At the center of the chamber stood tall shapes, pillars, statues, or perhaps something else. Their outlines flickered strangely in the light, as though they did not fully belong in this world. Joran stepped closer, his face pale but determined. "It is a hall," he whispered. "A hall of the builders." Myra shook her head. "Or a prison, just as they warned." Aaron lowered his voice. "No one goes inside yet. We study from here first." The team set up cameras and scanners at the entrance, recording every detail. The machines sent images back to their screens. The statues were carved into forms that seemed half real, half imagined. Some looked like figures with wings, others like creatures with many arms. But all of them faced the center of the chamber, where a circular pit opened into the floor. From the pit rose the strange hum, steady and endless, like a song with no end. Hours passed as they studied the chamber. No movement came from within. The hum never changed. Yet the explorers could not shake the feeling that something inside was aware of them. The air itself felt heavy, pressing against their skin. That night, Aaron remained awake, staring at the glow of the door. His thoughts spun in circles. The warnings of the Thelen had been clear. But standing before the chamber, he felt something else, something pulling at his mind, urging him forward. He wondered if the door had opened not by accident, but by intention. Perhaps it wanted to be seen. As the night deepened, a sound rose again from the chamber. It was faint, like a whisper of wind, but it carried a pattern. Myra woke first and listened closely. The whisper repeated itself in rhythm, almost like words spoken in a language too old to understand. She shook Aaron awake. "Do you hear it? It is speaking." Aaron listened, his heart quickening. The sound was not random. It carried weight, like meaning hidden behind tones. He ordered the translators to record it. The machines tried to compare the pattern to known languages, but the result was empty. The voice belonged to something far beyond human records. Suddenly, the glow of the carvings on the door flared brighter. The hum grew louder, shaking the sand. The ground trembled as dust poured from the chamber walls. Then, as quickly as it began, the glow faded. The carvings dimmed. The door shuddered once more, and with a slow, grinding motion, it began to close. The explorers watched as the massive slab sealed the chamber again. The hum weakened, then fell silent. Only the faint pulse remained, the heartbeat of stone, slow and steady. When the door finally shut, silence spread across the desert. The team stood in shock. Myra whispered, "It let us look, only for a moment." Joran frowned. "No. It showed us what it wanted us to see. Nothing more. Aaron placed a hand against the cold surface of the sealed door. His heart raced with questions. Why had the door opened? Why had it closed again? What lay within the pit at the center of the chamber? He looked at his team, their faces pale in the starlight. We have seen the first opening, he said quietly. And I fear it will not be the last. The desert wind carried his words into the night. Far above, the stars shone brightly, as though watching in silence. Somewhere deep behind the door, something stirred, waiting for the next time the seal would break. The closing of the door did not bring peace to the camp. If anything, it brought more fear. The memory of the glowing chamber and the whispering hum clung to everyone like a shadow. Each explorer carried the weight of what they had seen. Aaron could not rest. Myra dreamed of the pit in the center of the chamber, hearing voices in her sleep. Joran stared at the desert for hours, as if expecting something to crawl from the sands. Word of the event spread beyond the planet. The humans had sent recordings to their command, but the signals were intercepted by other species as well. Soon, ships began to arrive. Some came in secret, drifting quietly above the desert. Others came openly, landing on the rocks near the camp. Not all of them were friendly. One morning, the horizon filled with dust as 3 vessels touched down. From them stepped tall beings with long limbs and scaled skin. Their eyes glowed yellow in the sunlight, and their movements were sharp, almost like blades cutting through the air. The explorers recognized them as Valen, a people known for their pride and strength. The leader of the Valen stepped forward. His voice was deep and rough, translated through Aaron's wrist device. Humans, you have no right to open what was sealed. That door does not belong to you. Aaron stood firm, though his heart pounded. We did not force it open. It moved on its own. We are only trying to understand what is happening. The Valen leader's eyes narrowed. Understanding will not save you. The door is a wound in the world. If you continue to touch it, the wound will bleed. Before Aaron could answer, another ship descended from the sky. This one was sleek and silver, bearing the mark of the Thelen. The robed figures emerged once again, their masks glinting in the light. They walked calmly, but their presence carried an old heaviness. The leader of the Thelen raised his hand. Valen, stand down. The humans are not the only ones at risk here. If the door fails, it will bring ruin to us all. The Valen hissed, their scaled hands tightening into fists. You protect them, Thelen, though you know their kind is reckless. They stir dangers without care. The Thelen leader's voice grew stern. And yet, when others ran from the whispers of the past, it was the humans who looked and listened. Perhaps that courage is needed now. The tension in the air was sharp, but Aaron stepped between them. If you both know this door is dangerous, then let us not waste time arguing. Help us. Tell us what your people know. If it opens again, we may not survive without each other. The camp fell into silence. The wind carried sand across the ground as the aliens studied the human leader. The Valen muttered among themselves, their voices harsh and angry. The Thelen stood still, their glowing eyes fixed on the door. At last, the Thelen leader spoke. Very well. We will share what we know, but understand this. The door is not just a prison. It is a machine, a lock that holds the enemy in place. It requires balance, and balance is failing. That is why it stirs. The Valen leader growled. If the lock breaks, the shadows will return. Our ancestors swore to fight them, even if it cost every life. I say we destroy the door before it opens again. Myra gasped. Destroy it? But what if that frees what is inside? The Valen leader turned his sharp eyes to her. And what if leaving it brings the same end? You humans play with stones you do not understand. Aaron held up his hand. Enough. Destroying it may be worse than leaving it. But we cannot ignore it either. We must learn how the lock works. If it is breaking, maybe we can mend it? The Valen laughed bitterly, but the Thelen leader nodded slowly. There may be truth in your words. The builders who made the prison left patterns on the walls, instructions hidden in the carvings. Yet no one has been able to read them fully. Perhaps your human eyes see differently. Perhaps your minds can grasp what ours could not. Joran, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. We have already noticed patterns in the symbols. They are not just art. They carry numbers, sequences, like equations. We think they show steps, perhaps a method to control the door. The Valen leader spat in the sand. Equations will not stop shadows. Aaron looked at both sides. But courage and knowledge together might. Alone, we are weak. Together, we may hold this door shut. The argument stretched long into the night. The Thelen shared fragments of their history, stories of the Great War when the shadows first appeared. They described the builders, a union of many species who gave their strength to forge the prison. They spoke of songs that once calmed the door, chants that kept the lock steady. But those songs were lost to time. The Valen spoke of battles their ancestors fought, of weapons that burned like suns and shields that cracked under the weight of the enemy. They carried old pride, but also old wounds. To them, the shadows were not just a story. They were a scar. The humans listened, piecing together every detail. Myra drew the carvings in her book, connecting the lines into shapes. Joran worked with the machines, searching for repeating patterns. Aaron kept watch, his mind turning with the heavy thought that time was running short. At dawn, as the first light touched the desert, Aaron stood before the door with both the Thelen and Valen at his side. Together, they stared at the faint glow of the carvings. The Thelen leader spoke softly. The balance weakens. The door will open again. We must be ready. Aaron nodded. Then we will face it together. Humans, Thelen, Valen. We may not trust one another fully, but we cannot deny the truth. Alone, we fall. Together, perhaps we can hold the shadows back. For the first time, the Valen leader gave a small nod. Very well, human. But remember this. If you fail us, if you bring ruin, we will not forgive. Aaron looked at him steadily. If we fail, none of us will have the chance to forgive. The uneasy alliance was made. The desert world, once silent and forgotten, had become the meeting ground of species bound by fear, doubt, and the fragile hope that they might stand against what waited behind the door. And as the sun rose higher, the door gave a single, deep tremor, as though reminding them all that the true test had not yet begun. The days after the alliance were filled with uneasy work. Humans, Thelen and Valen shared the same camp, though they did not share the same trust. The Valen trained with their weapons at the edge of the dunes, their yellow eyes always watching the horizon. The Thelen sat quietly near the door, chanting low songs, hoping to keep the balance steady. The humans studied the carvings, marking every line and pattern. Aaron felt the weight of command more than ever. He moved between groups, calming tempers and reminding everyone why they were here. But he knew that patience was thin. At any moment, fear or anger could tear the alliance apart. On the sixth night after the first opening, the desert air grew heavy. The sky darkened though no clouds were present. The stars above flickered, as if something moved between them. Myra noticed first. She pointed upward, her voice shaking. Look at the sky. The light is breaking. The Thelen stood quickly, their masks glowing faintly. One whispered, the shadows stir. Then came the sound. It was not thunder, nor wind. It was a low vibration, rising from the ground and the air at the same time. The carvings on the door brightened, glowing like fire across the stone. The hum they had heard before returned, louder than ever, shaking the camp walls. The door trembled, then burst open with a force that sent sand flying in all directions. A blast of hot air rushed from the chamber, carrying with it a strange scent, dry and bitter, like burned metal. The explorers shielded their faces as the glow lit the desert like a second sun. From the darkness inside, shapes began to move. At first they seemed like smoke, twisting and curling, but then they thickened, forming shadows with weight. They slid across the ground without feet, tall and shapeless, their forms shifting as though made from night itself. The hum grew sharper, almost like a scream. Myra gasped. They are real. The Valen raised their weapons, beams of energy bursting into the dark. The blast struck the shadows, tearing holes through them, but the holes closed again in seconds. The shadows kept moving forward, silent and steady, their edges reaching out like claws of mist. The Thelen shouted words in their old tongue, their chants echoing across the desert. The glow on the carvings flickered as if answering the call, but the shadows did not stop. Aaron shouted over the chaos. Form lines. Do not let them spread. The humans set up their rifles and launched flares into the sky, trying to bring more light. The shadows recoiled for a moment under the brightness, twisting away, but soon they pressed forward again. Joran fired his weapon again and again, frustration on his face. It is like fighting smoke. Aaron pulled him back. Not smoke. Something worse. The first shadow reached the camp, sliding across the sand and striking a machine. The metal cracked and fell apart in silence, as if the very life had been drained from it. Another shadow touched a flare, and the light vanished instantly, swallowed whole. Myra cried out. They eat energy. They feed on it. The Thelen leader turned to Aaron, his voice urgent. If they consume too much, they will grow stronger. You must stop them now, before the door releases more. The Valen leader bared his sharp teeth. Then we fight until nothing is left. He charged forward, swinging a long blade that glowed with plasma. The blade cut through a shadow, and for the first time, the creature shrieked. The sound was not of any living being, it was hollow, like metal tearing. The shadow recoiled, but did not fall. The battle raged across the dunes. Humans fired, Thelen chanted, Valen struck with fury. Still the shadows pressed forward, endless and patient, as though time itself belonged to them. Aaron's mind raced. The carvings. The murals inside the chamber. He remembered how every statue in the hall had faced the pit. They were not guards, they were pointing to something. The pit was the source. He shouted to Myra. The pit is the key. We must reach it. Myra's eyes widened with fear, but she nodded. Then we go together. They pushed forward, slipping through the chaos, guided by the light of their flares. Two Valen warriors followed, covering them with sharp strikes. The shadows twisted around, reaching for them, but the chants of the Thelen held them back just enough to pass. Inside the chamber, the hum shook their bones. The pit glowed faintly, a circle of endless black that seemed to swallow all light. Aaron stepped closer, his heart racing. He felt as though the pit was staring back at him. Myra pointed to the carvings near the rim. Look here. The patterns are not random. They form a cycle, a rhythm. It is like music. Aaron touched the lines with his hand. They pulsed beneath his skin, glowing brighter with each beat. His chest tightened, and for a moment he heard the whispers again, words he could almost understand. Balance, he whispered. It speaks of balance. The shadows pressed closer, their forms sliding through the walls. The Valen struck at them, buying seconds of time. Myra pulled out her recorder and began to hum the rhythm shown in the carvings. Her voice was small but steady, rising and falling in time with the glowing lines. The carvings lit brighter. The pit shivered. The shadows shrieked as the hum filled the chamber. Aaron joined in, his voice rough, matching the rhythm. The glow spread outward, racing along the carvings, up the walls, and across the statues. The entire hall came alive with light. Outside, the door blazed like a sun. The shadows recoiled, twisting in pain, their forms breaking apart under the wave of light. The Thelen raised their voices in chants, adding strength to the song. The Valen shouted as they drove their blades through the fading creatures. One by one, the shadows dissolved into nothing, leaving only silence behind. The light dimmed slowly, and the hum fell quiet. The door shuddered and began to close again, sealing the chamber once more. The explorers stood in the silent desert, breathing hard. Sand lay scattered, machines broken, weapons drained. But the shadows were gone. For now. The Thelen leader lowered his mask, his eyes glowing faintly. You have seen them. You have fought them. Now you know the truth. The prison weakens. The Valen leader growled, his voice low. And if it breaks again, not even your songs will stop them. Aaron looked at the sealed door, his heart heavy but determined. Then we will find another way. Humans do not run from the dark. We bring light, no matter the cost. The desert was quiet again, but everyone knew it was only the beginning. The enemy had returned. And the door would not hold forever. The desert was quiet again, but the silence carried no comfort. The shadows had been forced back, yet everyone knew it was only a pause. The prison door still pulsed with its steady rhythm, glowing faintly in the night. It felt less like a seal now and more like a warning, reminding them of what waited behind it. Aaron stood with his team, staring at the broken machines scattered across the camp. The humans had survived, but at great cost. 2 shelters were torn apart, weapons were drained, and the communication tower flickered weakly. The Valen sharpened their blades in silence, their pride wounded by the battle. The Thelen sat in circles, chanting softly, their voices heavy with sorrow. Myra sat near the fire, sketching the carvings she had seen around the pit. Her hands shook, but her eyes were sharp with thought. The song kept them back, she said. It worked, but only for a moment. If the door opens again, the shadows will not be held so easily. Joran rubbed his face, exhausted. The carvings are not enough. We cannot stand here singing forever. There has to be another way. Aaron listened to them both, his mind turning. Humans were not the strongest, nor the oldest, nor the most powerful species among the stars. But they had always survived by building, by shaping tools from what was around them. Where others saw dead ends, humans saw paths. That thought gave him an idea. He turned to the Thelen leader. The prison is a machine, you said. A lock that needs balance. Then it can be repaired, cannot it? The Thelen tilted his masked head. Repaired? The builders are gone. Their knowledge is lost. No species has been able to touch the lock since it was made. Aaron shook his head. Not lost. Only hidden. The carvings are instructions, not warnings. They are blueprints. They tell us how to use the door against what it holds. Myro looked up sharply. Yes. The patterns I copied, they show cycles of energy. Like a circuit, feeding into itself. If we build a device that can follow that rhythm, maybe it can strengthen the prison. The Valen leader gave a sharp laugh. You think machines will save you? The shadows will devour them as they devoured yours. Aaron met his glare. Not if the machines are built from the door itself. The energy is already inside. We just need to guide it. The camp grew quiet as the idea settled in. The Valen leader folded his arms, still doubtful, but the Thelen leader slowly nodded. Perhaps it is not impossible. The builders left their will in the stone. Maybe your human hands can wake it? For the next days, the uneasy alliance became a forge of work. The humans sketched designs, simple but clever, combining parts of their machines with fragments of stone taken carefully from the carvings. The Thelen added their chants, searching for rhythms that matched the pulses in the door. The Valen tested the devices, striking them with their weapons to see if they could endure battle. Myro led much of the design, her small hands fitting wires and stones together. She spoke of resonance, of matching the heartbeat of the door with energy from their machines. If we can mirror its rhythm, she explained, we can create a shield that pushes the shadows back, not just for a moment, but for as long as we keep the balance. Joran built the first prototype, a small sphere wrapped in glowing carvings. When activated, it hummed softly, the same sound they had heard from the pit. Aaron placed it on the sand, and the glow spread in a circle around it. For a moment, the air felt heavier, but also steadier, like standing inside a fortress. The Thelen leader touched the glow with his hand. It carries the song, he said softly. Yes. This may hold them. Encouraged, the team worked harder. They built larger versions, each one tuned more carefully. By the third day, they had 4 glowing devices, each the size of a barrel. Together, they created a field of light that wrapped the camp. The shadows did not return during those nights, though the door continued to pulse, reminding them that time was short. But Aaron knew defense was not enough. If the shadows returned stronger, a wall of light would only delay the end. They needed to strike back. He gathered the leaders by the fire. We can hold them now, but soon they will overwhelm even this. We must use the door itself as a weapon. If the carvings carry power to seal them, then that power can be turned outward. The Valen leader leaned forward, his yellow eyes sharp. You mean to strike them with the prison itself? Aaron nodded. Yes. We will channel its energy, not just to hold the shadows back, but to burn them away. The Thelen leader's voice grew cautious. Such a thing is dangerous. If the balance is broken, the prison may collapse entirely. Aaron's voice was firm. If we do nothing, it will break on its own. At least this way, we have a chance. The argument lasted long into the night, but in the end, necessity won. The Alliance agreed to try. Work began again. The humans crafted conduits, long rods etched with the patterns from the carvings. The Thelen guided them with chants, their voices weaving through the machines as if binding them to the stone's rhythm. The Valen charged the rods with their weapons, feeding them energy that hummed like fire in the metal. Finally, the weapon was ready, a great frame built before the door, glowing with the light of the carvings. It hummed with the same rhythm as the prison itself, its energy building slowly, steady as a heartbeat. On the 7th night, the door shook once more. The carvings flared, and the air turned cold. The ground split, and the shadows poured forth again, twisting and writhing, endless in number. The camp stood ready. The Valen roared as they charged, blades glowing. The Thelen sang their chants, voices rising high. The humans stood at the weapon, hands steady on its controls. Aaron gave the order. Now. Release it. The weapon blazed with light, brighter than any star. The hum rose into a cry that shook the desert. A wave of energy burst outward, sweeping across the shadows. For the first time, they did not heal from the strike. Their forms burned in the light, tearing apart as if their very essence was undone. The shadows shrieked and fell back, twisting wildly. The weapon pulsed again, each burst stronger than the last. The ground shook, the sky flickered, but the shadows dissolved, one by one, until only silence remained. The door shuddered, then sealed itself once more. The carvings dimmed, but the weapon still glowed faintly, proof that the prison's power could be guided. The camp erupted in weary relief. The Valen raised their blades in triumph, the Thelen bowed their heads in quiet thanks, and the humans leaned against their machines, exhausted but proud. Aaron looked at the door, his heart steady. We have found a way. Not just to hold them, but to fight them. This is the human solution. We will not let the shadows rule the stars again. The desert was still, but the Alliance knew the war was not over. They had won a battle, but the prison was weakening. The final test still waited. The desert was silent again, but this silence was different. It was deep, heavy, as though the land itself was waiting to see what would happen next. The prison door no longer glowed. Its carvings were dim, almost lifeless, and the steady pulse that once echoed from it was fading. The battle had been won, but everyone could see the truth. The weapon the humans had built drew its strength from the same energy that sealed the prison. Each time they had used it, the door had weakened. They had pushed the shadows back, yes, but the cost was clear. The prison could not hold forever. Aaron stood before the door, staring at its surface. Cracks ran across the carvings now, small but sharp, glowing faintly with the last breath of energy. He placed his hand on the stone and felt no rhythm. Only silence. Myra came to his side, her eyes tired but thoughtful. It is almost empty. The prison has given all it can. The next time the shadows rise, there may be nothing left to hold them. The Thelen leader approached, his mask faintly glowing. His voice was low. We warned you that balance is fragile. The prison was not built to fight again. It was only built to hold. Its end is near. The Valen leader stepped forward, his blade resting against his shoulder. Then what do we do? Wait for the shadows to come and destroy us all? No. We must strike first. If we cannot hold them, we end them. Aaron listened to both sides, his thoughts racing. Humans had found a way to fight, but the fight itself was tearing apart the very lock that kept the shadows contained. If the door failed, the galaxy would face an endless war. But if they sealed it the wrong way, the prison might collapse completely. He turned to Myra. You studied the carvings more than anyone. Is there another way? Myra frowned, thinking. The builders never meant for the prison to last forever. Look at the cycles carved on the stones. They show endings and beginnings. Perhaps the door was not only a prison. Perhaps it was also a path. Joran, standing nearby, shook his head. A path? You mean to open it completely? That would be madness. But Myra was not shaken. Not open. Transform. If we can shift the energy, not to hold but to cleanse, then maybe the shadows can be erased completely. It would not be a prison anymore. It would be a fire. The Thelen leader stepped closer. A fire bright enough to burn the dark. Dangerous. If you fail, the shadows will pour out, free and endless. Aaron's jaw tightened. If we do nothing, they will pour out anyway. At least this way, we have a chance to finish what the builders started. The leaders of the Alliance fell into silence. The idea was dangerous, but it was the only path that gave hope. Finally, the Valen leader lifted his blade and spoke. Then let it be fire. Better to burn than to fade. The decision was made. For days the camp worked as one. The humans rewired their machines, not to create shields this time, but to direct all their power into the carvings. The Thelen guided every movement, their chants weaving into the work, steady as the rhythm of a heartbeat. The Valen shaped weapons to feed the machines with raw energy. Everyone had a role, and for the first time, the three species moved like a single hand. Aaron worked without rest. Every screw, every wire, every stone mattered. He thought of the shadows, endless and patient, waiting behind the cracks. He thought of the people who would never see them, safe across the stars, not knowing how close the dark had come. That thought gave him strength. At last, the device was ready. It stood before the door like a great frame of light, larger and brighter than the first weapon. Its hum was not sharp now but steady, deep, like the calm before a storm. The carvings on the door flickered weakly as if they knew what was coming. On the final night, the sky grew strange once more. The stars dimmed, and the air grew cold. The door trembled, its cracks glowing brighter, and the hum of the prison returned, broken and unsteady. From the gaps, the first shadows slipped out, twisting across the sand. The Alliance stood ready. The Valen roared, their blades shining. The Thelen raised their chants, their voices firm. The humans powered the machine, their hands steady on the controls. Aaron gave the signal. Now. Release it. The machine blazed with light, brighter than the sun. Energy poured into the carvings, racing through every line and crack. The door shook violently, its glow surging like fire across the stone. The shadows shrieked as the light struck them, their forms breaking apart under the force. But the light did not stop at the surface. It poured into the cracks, into the pit beyond. For a moment, the entire chamber glowed as if the desert itself had turned into a star. The shadows screamed, not just those outside but those still within, their endless voices breaking apart in the blaze. The ground shook, the sky split with light, and then there was silence. When the light faded, the door stood still. Its carvings were gone, burned away. Its surface was plain stone now, cracked but quiet. The hum had ended. The explorers waited, holding their breath. No shadows came. No glow returned. The prison was not simply sealed, it was empty. Myra stepped forward, touching the stone. Her voice trembled. It is done. They are gone. The Thelen leader lowered his mask, his face pale but calm. The fire has consumed them. The prison rests at last. The Valen leader raised his blade to the sky and shouted, a cry of triumph. The enemy is no more. His warriors echoed the call, their voices fierce with victory. The humans stood quietly, their faces tired but proud. They had not only survived, they had changed the course of history. Aaron looked at the plain stone door. He felt no hum, no rhythm, only silence. For the first time since they had found it, the door was truly at rest. He turned to his people, his voice steady. We came here searching for knowledge. We found war, but we also found strength. Together, we ended what the builders began. This is what it means to be human. To fight, to endure, and to bring light into the dark. The Alliance broke camp days later. The desert was quiet, the plain door standing alone, nothing more than stone. To anyone who found it in the future, it would seem only an ancient ruin. But those who had been there would never forget. The Thelen returned to their people, carrying the story of balance restored. The Valen left with pride, their honor sharpened by victory. And the humans carried their records, their sketches, their machines, proof that when the universe trembled, humanity had stood firm. The stars shone bright above them as they left the desert behind. The shadows were gone. The prison was silent. The ancient door would not open again. And for the first time in many ages, the galaxy could rest.